banks of the river Tigris in Mesopotamia, the Norwegian explorer Thor Heyerdahl decided to build the largest and most sophisticated reed ship seen in the world for thousands of years. The year was 1977. The place, the Garden of Eden. This idyllic landscape was not only the mythical birthplace of Adam and Eve, it was also part of ancient Sumeria, still widely regarded as the oldest civilization known to man. The builders of these great temples were familiar with the use of wheeled vehicles, the first ever known, and familiar too with the techniques of building reed boats of considerable size. In Thor Heyerdahl's view, one of the most important tools at the disposal of early man. But was this watery landscape really the cradle of civilization? And is it right to look for a beginning in any single place, even the Garden of Eden? Directly descended from the Sumerians, the marsh Arabs of Mesopotamia, now part of modern Iraq, build their homes in the same age-old style between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Thor Heyerdahl had been here before. This time he was coming back to find out all he could before embarking on the most ambitious venture of his career.
Tell him I remember his father very well and ask how is his father. I was very much impressed by the marsh Arabs. I thought it was an exceptional people, clean in every sense of the word. And I had a feeling that here I met an eternal civilization. They were living in harmony with nature and from nature without destroying nature. And they lived the way they did, and they lived well for at least 5,000 years because they had the descendants of the early Sumerians. It's the same system, you see.
This model boat had been made in South America. But the technique of plaiting the reeds together was echoed precisely in the slender pillars which formed an elegant arch above their heads, here on the other side of the world.
As soon as the sun goes down behind the bed, it's nice and cool. Yes. This is better buried. Yes, you can see it's big and strong. I want to go in and have a look at this. Okay, this is fine. Guys, tell them to start cutting. They can start.
هسه اشتغلوا قصوا
Yeah.
قصوا
We had done something we'd never done before. We had even taken account of the correct month to cut the reeds. Row 1 and row 2 absorbed a lot of water because we'd cut in the wrong season. Nobody could tell us. But the marsh Arabs had said if you want to float for a year or two, you have to cut it in August.
Once again, Thor sent for the same South American Indians who'd helped to construct Ra 2 for his famous Atlantic voyage, the Aymara. These men, from Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, were the best reed boat builders in the world.
Allá el verde. El verde. Hay mucho.
But when they saw the local Verdi reeds which grew in Mesopotamia, they shook their heads. South American totora, certainly, even African papyrus, but this stuff, never. Patiently, Thor introduced them to the Arabs who would be working alongside them. It was the local men, he explained, who would prepare the bundles of reeds. The Aymara, with their special skills, would actually build the ship. A scale model was produced to demonstrate the method of construction. But with such a clash of cultures, it still seemed highly likely that misunderstandings would arise.
No, there was no conflict at all. The Indians from South America were a bit surprised to find that this reed was a third variety. They were used to totora from their own lake, which has one single stem like the papyrus, but the berdi is forking into leaves. But since the bundles were actually built by the Marsh Arabs, the Aymara Indians were just dictating how to tie the bundles together. It worked out beautifully.
Accustomed to the cool air of the Andes, the Indians were quite unprepared for the searing heat of the midday sun. But their Arab hosts made sure they were well protected. In spite of their confidence and sense of purpose, Thor and his team were groping towards the unknown. In overall dimensions, this vessel would be nearly twice the size of Ra 2. Nothing like it had been seen in the world for thousands of years. Traditionally, the birthplace of civilization was supposed to be here, in the land of the Sumerians. But they themselves had left written records testifying that they came by ship from a mysterious land called Dilmun. But where was Dilmun? This was Thor Heyerdahl in his element. In spite of the heat and the threat of disease, he was doing what he does best, working side by side with the sort of people he instinctively knows and understands. The construction of a reed ship is simple but effective. Once they've been hauled into position, the long bundles are lashed tightly together into two much larger bundles. The first forms the port side of the vessel, and the second the starboard. Like many of the designs of nature, the basic pattern keeps repeating itself on a bigger scale. Finally, the halves are drawn inwards towards a smaller central bundle. Once in the water, the berdi would become as strong and supple as rope. But while it still remained tinder dry, it must quite literally be bashed into shape.
Okay.
By mid-November, she was ready for launching.
I want to thank Mr. Gata. I want his little granddaughter to give the name to the vessel. Could you please go and fetch water as soon as they get there?
None too sure that this was woman's work, her grandfather gave a helping hand. Then he announced in Arabic, "This ship is to enter the water with the permission of God and the blessing of the Prophet. She will be called Tigris, after the river where she was built, and down which she will shortly sail." As part of the ceremony, the local Arabs wanted Thor to dip his hand in the blood of a sacrificed ox. He refused. But he couldn't prevent them from taking the life of a sheep in order to carry out their own ritual practiced since the time of Abraham. It was the custom for every new house and every new boat to be marked by a handprint in blood to protect the occupants from misfortune. The rites duly completed, The moment had come for ship and river to be united.
We're going.
It was not a propitious beginning. At the foot of the slipway, Tigris stuck fast in the mud, while the Arab onlookers nodded sagely among themselves. They knew very well that for such an important event, it should have been the blood of an ox. A great believer in symbols, Thor never failed to decorate the sails of his vessels. This time, as well as the familiar emblem of the sun, he added a Sumerian-style pyramid. As with all reed ships, which are at their weakest in the centre, the mast took the form of a triangle, with one leg firmly anchored to each side. 3 veterans of the Ra voyages were back again. Yuri Senkovich, the Russian doctor, Carlo Mari from Italy, and the American, Norman Baker.
Thor found a Sumerian jar that had what looked like a centerboard on it. And Thor asked me to look at that jar, and I did. And he asked, "What do you think it is?" And I said, "I can't think of what else it might be but a centerboard." Well, that meant that these people could sail these ships, not just simply drift downwind as we had on Ra 1 and Ra 2. And so again, I was anxious to sail a ship of reeds that could be navigated. And that again drew me to the Tigris expedition.
This is something I'm going to bring up at another time, which to me is an extremely important part of any expedition, and that's to speak beforehand on something we call expedition fever, which we must suppress and which we must overcome. This is something that is more dangerous to any expedition than any hurricane and anything. But it is something that it is possible to overcome. And I think that I can say with all the expeditions I have had, we have been able to overcome it because the men on board realize the danger if you start saying something that may irritate another and one word takes the other.
What would you say Thor was looking for in a crew member?
Well, a reporter asked him that question once after one of our voyages. And Thor admitted that he did look for particular skills. For example, he needed a navigator, and I was that. He needed a medical man. Yuri Senkovich from Russia was that. But he told the reporter, and I remember, what I really look for in a crew member is just simply a man who can endure with a sense of humor.
Thor described the last few days before sailing as worse than a madhouse. Unruly crowds of tourists swarmed over everything, forcing the crew to sign autographs and pose for photographs. It was half desperate and half hilarious. But now they were on their way. For the first part of the journey, Thor employed a local pilot who knew the moods of the river.
Port side, because it's very shallow in the turn here. Hey, can you...
Bjorn, slack your sheet.
Okay. Turn.
He doesn't seem to be...
At the age of 63, when most people are thinking of retiring, Thor Heyerdahl was beginning a new adventure. Already his life was rich in achievement, but he himself was as restless as ever. He felt as if he was embarked on a great quest from which there was no escape. Each clue seemed to lead backwards to another clue, but never yet to a true beginning. But the river left no time for philosophizing. Something was wrong with the rudder oar, and Thor was the first to spot it. Instead of helping to steer the ship, it was dragging through the mud like a plough.
Oh, it's jammed.
Frantically, they struggled to push Tigris into deeper water before the oar snapped under the enormous pressure. But each time, the current swept them in again. In desperation, they agreed to accept a tow from one of the launches that ferry passengers up and down the river. It was hardly the beginning they would have chosen, but with the rudder now firmly jammed in one position, they had little choice. Gliding serenely through the timeless landscape, the centuries seemed to fall away like moments in a dream. 3,000 years before, villagers must have paused to watch as Sumerian voyagers made their way towards the open sea.
We have to stop overnight and fix this. I mean, it's pointless in going with this. We may lose a day, we may lose 2 days, but by gosh, we may lose the whole boat if we don't do it.
If we don't want to go there in the moonlight, then we should anchor now. But I don't think we should be told either.
I prefer not being towed more than necessary. We certainly should be towed in the turns and so on until we have complete steering control, but there is no bend before that place.
Overnight, the rudder oar was taken ashore to be repaired and strengthened. Then, at first light, they saw for the first time just where they had anchored. From a nearby paper mill, a continuous stream of chemical waste was pouring into the river. In time, it could dissolve the very reeds Tigris was made of.
It seems to me that this part, this side...
No, this part is for the chorizo, the verde.
Yeah, also, yes.
Go down. We've been in the water now for 17 days,
But you can see at the water line, from that side, it's a bit higher than here.
And also the bow is higher. That's why I was wondering. And this is the side where the pollution is accumulating more than anything, between the dock and...
That's right. It does not pile up at the bow. It goes away from the bow.
What we have today is going to accumulate, and it is doing it very quickly. It is not like the pollution you have had since the world started to tick. I mean, that could all recycle and was part of the clockwork of this planet. Today we are throwing in, we could call it all sorts of things which is going to plug up the rotation. So we are in real trouble unless we really do something about it. I think that earlier civilizations have felt much more part of the universe. We seem to think that we are the creators and that we can do what we like and let us destroy nature and we'll build a better planet, which of course is impossible. I mean, we are created by this nature or whatever has created this nature.
With no time to waste, the mended rudder oar was swung back on board.
Okay, we are very clear on port.
As Tigris moved down towards the open waters of the Gulf, Thor pondered on the enormous changes that had taken place since Sumerian times, and few of them for the better.
This is Simba Island, Simba the sailor.
Where once there'd been green fields, trees and stately palaces, now there was nothing but oil, silt and sand, and all the clamour of the modern world.
It's the Ivor Stream, Norway.
That's right.
In fact, I think it's from Larvik. That's your hometown, Thor.
Instant
Hey, Hans and us, Bjorn, keep your yard arm level.
For the journey to Bahrain, 300 miles down the Persian Gulf, they had to rely on a single thin sail, the equivalent of a spinnaker. capable of taking them downwind, but useless for tacking. The mainsail was still in two pieces, awaiting the attention of an expert sailmaker. In a normal season, with the wind blowing down the Gulf from the northeast, all would have been well. But this was not a normal season. Day after day, the wind blew up from the mouth of the Gulf, pushing them further and further westward. Unable to navigate, they were in danger of being caught in the treacherous shallows to the north of Failaka Island, off the coast of Kuwait. SOS signals to the coastal radio station went unanswered. There was just one other hope of rescue. A few days before, the jovial captain of a Russian merchantman, the Slavs, had paid them a goodwill visit. There was a chance he was still in the vicinity. Next morning, Norman Baker tried again.
Slavs, Slavs, Slavs. This is Tigris calling Slavs. This is Tigris calling Slavs. This is Tigris calling Slavs. Over. This is the expedition ship Tigris. Tigris calling Slavs. Over. Nothing. Oh, here they are, here they are.
Friendly contact at last. Thor readily agreed to be towed out of those dangerous waters. Already he'd been forced to pay a ransom to marauding pirates. Next time, if they stayed any longer, the payment might be in blood. With no change in the wind, the friendly Russians eventually towed them all the way to Bahrain. The world's largest dockyard had just been opened, capable of handling gigantic supertankers. Ironically, their first customer was a floating haystack. But 5,000 years ago, Bahrain served the needs not of the living, but the dead. On the island, which lies just off the coast, there are thousands upon thousands of burial mounds, making this the largest graveyard the world has ever known. The sheer size of it suggested to Thor that men must have travelled great distances to bury their dead in this sacred place. Geoffrey Bibby, the leading expert on Bahrain, had a surprise for Thor. A traditional fishing boat made not from reeds, which don't grow in the area, but from date palm stems.
This is really professional work.
This is the closest they've got to the reed.
Bibby's excavations had convinced him that in ancient times, Bahrain had been an important trading port, in contact not only with the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, but also with India. There was nowhere else with a better claim to be that legendary place known to the Sumerians as Dilmun.
Just here in this area that we got all the stuff from the from the long distance trade, as it were. We found actually on the in the entrance here, we found one seal with the Indus Valley script on it. And on the buildings on either side, we got the Indus weights of the same size and weight, of course, particularly as they were using in the Harappan culture on the Indus Valley, and I think it was about 8 or 9 seals. I've always reckoned it must have been the customs house or something of that sort, where the cargoes coming in and out were registered.
Yeah.
And all through the sand of the road here, there are microscopic bits of copper, and they speak of cargoes of up to 30 tons.
Yes.
And that's why I've wanted to know whether a reed boat can take that weight. And
Yes.
I gather...
This I can answer already.
Yeah.
No, that's one of the
Yeah.
questions we already have answered before we came here.
Mm.
We have been 11 men on board with 15 tons of cargo. And as you saw, we were floating very high, and we
Yes.
could with no difficulty carry not only 30 tons, but even 50 tons, and come right in here in a water that would fit what you say here,
Yeah.
the water level would have been at the
Without
time.
putting us deep in the water.
With no
you
problem at
couldn't.
all.
Many archaeologists tend to assume that each of the world's ancient cultures grew like a tree in the place where it was first discovered. But Thor Heyerdahl was beginning to think that civilization itself might have spread like seeds with the wind and the current. But even so, somewhere, there had to be a beginning. At last, the mainsail for which they'd been waiting was mended and ready for use. From now on, they should be able to sail into the wind.
Pull your preventer, deadlift. Pull your preventer. Pull your port preventer, deadlift. Pull the port preventer. Don't let the yard arm hit the mast. One more time. Let's go.
Tigris responded like a
Let's
thoroughbred.
go. Okay.
For the first time on the voyage, they experienced the exhilaration of pure sailing. That day, Norman Baker logged a speed of 5 knots, which had never been achieved before on any of Thor's expeditions. At this point in the voyage, they had no fixed destination and only one aim, to get into the Indian Ocean. But this was not going to be easy. Ahead lay the Straits of Hormuz, one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Day and night, a continuous stream of tankers have to negotiate the narrow, tortuous entrance.
We had the big tankers whizzing by us day and night. They didn't see us on the radar, and we were unable to move out of the way quickly without putting the oars into the water. And these big tankers cannot turn within a mile.
It was all too obvious that the little Tigris could easily slip unnoticed under one of those massive hulls. But by New Year's Day, they were safely through and ready to celebrate.
Did the Russians have great those? Or just caviar?
They may have it in the future.
What do you expect? I'm serious. Made in Hong Kong.
Happy New Year.
With no fixed plan, Thor asked his crew to vote on where they should go next. Oman, capital of the small state of Muscat, was the popular choice. But it wasn't popular with the local police. For the first time in his life, Thor met with a hostile reception.
What would be your next port after this? Are you intending to touch another port? Or?
We just want to go as long as the vessel will float and see. It's testing a primitive type of vessel to see how long it will float and where it's likely that ancient people could have traveled.
Several days passed before anyone was allowed ashore to buy provisions. They learned later that it was all because they had a Russian citizen on board. Next day, the local director of antiquities, Dr. Paolo Costa, offered to drive Thor into the interior. Half ruined as it was, they felt sure they were looking at the remains of a stepped pyramid, exactly like the ones in Mexico and Mesopotamia. All the evidence suggested that the Sumerians had been here, and they could only have come by sea.
With stepped terraces, and with at least one outer ramp on one side.
Not far away, they came to an area where copper had once been mined and smelted on a colossal scale. Both Thor and his guide had seen tablets in the Sumerian town of Ur, which spoke of goods exchanged for copper from Makan. Was this then the site of the legendary copper mountain of Makan? The port of Oman, which had been so reluctant to welcome them, now seemed reluctant to let them go. It was a day of flat calm, when only muscle power would move the ship. As she made her stately progress out to sea, Tigris looked even more like her ancient forebears than she did under sail. The calm weather gave them the chance to give Tigris a thorough inspection before facing the Indian Ocean.
As we saw swimming there, I mean, the repair is perfect. There is nothing wrong with it, and we haven't lost a single piece of bedding.
Nope. Nope, that's really fine. I check the repair every time I go into the water, and that's really holding up beautifully.
We have gone down, there's no question, but we've been in for how many days? More than 70 days?
More than 70 days.
Yeah.
I think we've been in the water long in Route 1 or Route 2. Everybody, of course, was very hungry. Usually, when we sat down to dinner, we had Russian black bread, which Yuri had brought straight from the heart of Russia, and it was hard as a rock. You just simply had to take the time to soak it in your soup or your tea or your coffee to get it soft so you could eat it. Tor came to the table one evening and very, very, very hungry, and he picked up a piece of this Russian black bread without soaking it, bit right into it, and snapped off the end of one of his teeth. And of course, he howled with pain. He threw the bread overboard. He said, "Lousy communist bread." And Yuri picked up a little piece of tooth from the table and said, "Lousy capitalist tooth."
You can bring up the sail.
For years, archaeological research had been going on all around the Arabian Peninsula. Now it was falling into place like the beads on a necklace. First Dilmun, then Makan, and whenever these two were mentioned, in the old Sumerian records there was a reference to a third place, Meluha. Was this the ancient name for the most easterly of the great civilizations, which had sprung up in the valley of the Indus? 2 weeks later, they were off the coast of Pakistan. Here, Tigris would have to wait, while Thor made the 300-mile journey up the valley of the Indus to the ruins of a mysterious city.
When the soundings get to 5, 6, 7 meters, we should anchor.
Let go the anchor!
For 3,500 years, the world knew nothing of this place. The conquering armies of Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great had passed this way without ever suspecting that the remains of a great civilization lay just beneath their feet. Today, the local name for it is Mohenjo-Daro, which means mound of the dead. What the original name was, no one knew, but ringing in Thor's ears was the word Meluha. 10 years after the Tigris expedition, Thor took me back to Mohenjo-Daro.
It's quite deep.
He showed me the public baths, once completely lined with asphalt, which could only have come from Mesopotamia.
Purely ceremonial, or would they have
I
used it
believe
for
so,
bathing?
because you always found them associated with step platforms. You remember in Chan Chan, there is one like this. In the Maldives, you have it like this, and always associated with religious
So it wouldn't have been a
structure.
public bath, because actually it rather
No.
reminds me of Pompeii. I know
Yes.
it's 3,000 years
No,
old.
I think it is really a religious
Yes,
structure.
yes.
Solar oriented and with the ceremonial benches at the sides.
An elaborate hydraulic system fed the drains which ran down the middle of nearly every street.
They're covered with the original stones. All the rest is brick. It's very...
They really took more trouble with their drains than many medieval cities, I think.
Well, and many in this part of the world today.
Right in the centre of the city, capped now by a Buddhist temple of much later date, stood the remains of a stepped pyramid made entirely of adobe bricks.
What we're getting up to it now, I mean, that's obviously started as a sort of signal.
I think that the point that people find extremely hard to grasp is that at a certain date, 3 civilizations should have, as it were, appeared fully fledged at that particular moment in history.
Well, this is maybe the main problem. And personally, I feel very strongly that something did happen at that time that set a lot of people moving, and moving by boat. Because we know from all these 3 early civilizations, and I'm speaking about the Egyptian, the Mesopotamian, and the one here in the Indus Valley, they are all on the 3 main navigable rivers around the same part of this ocean. And they all start at the same time and have so many features in common. And since we know that from the very beginning they had boats, and the same kind of boats, reed boats, and knowing that they are suitable of use for ocean transfer, I think that we can conclude safely that 3000 BC there was contact between all these 3 main civilizations.
But we're a long way from the sea here. I mean, it's over 300 miles.
Yes, but still we are right on the navigable Indus River, or I mean the river ran right next to the walls of the city at the time it was inhabited. And what is interesting is that all modern excavations show that all the sites associated with Mohenjo-daro here in Pakistan and India, they all are on what used to be a navigable river. So they all have communicated by boat.
There was another, equally puzzling mystery. Why did this culture so suddenly collapse after just 1,500 years? Was it a flood or a famine? Or did the king lead his people to a safer place, perhaps after defeat in battle? To find the answer, Thor turned to the local people.
What they know is that there was a king who was ruling over this whole territory. So that's only they know.
I see.
Yeah.
And that king was living in Mohenjo-daro?
चेतो तो बादशाह जो को हो इतना ही रहंदो हो इन मोहनजोदड़ो
ये वडो बादशाह दड़ो आ ने जो को मथे
हाँ
ये तख्ता बादशाह
अच्छा he said that it was the capital of the king.
Yes.
He used to rule over the country from there, that place.
And he has heard this from his father, his grandfather?
यह गाल तो हाँ जा वड़ा कना है नहीं
वड़ा वड़ा
yes.
So it's the local people tell this, not scientists.
No, it's the local tradition. Yes.
Do they know what happened in the end?
They were actually sinful people, and that was a calamity by the nature that destroyed them.
He said this?
Yes, he said this.
Oh, this is very interesting.
Yes.
An entire city destroyed because its citizens were sinners. The idea has a biblical ring to it. But flooding seems a much more likely explanation. There's evidence that Mohenjo-daro was partially destroyed and rebuilt no less than 7 times. Each time, the mighty river Indus changed its course, eventually leaving the city high and dry. But in its heyday, Thor was convinced the place had commercial and cultural links right across the known world. And as if to prove it, on that first visit, the local people had shown him this: a tiny seal found in the ruins depicting a reed ship, perhaps, like Tigris herself, more than capable of crossing the oceans. Reunited with his crew, Thor set a course for Africa.
When we left the Indus Valley, we sailed, as you all know, for a number of days without any definite aim. And then I was tempted, let us try, once we have linked up Mesopotamia with Indus Valley, let us see if it is possible to link this one up again with the Red Sea area, that is with the early Egyptian world. In that case, if we manage, then we have linked all the early civilizations up by primitive navigation. And this is why I have suggested that we set a course straight for the Gulf of Aden, Egypt, and the inner corner of the Mediterranean world. Now, my interest is to find out whether it was possible that all these big civilizations could have received inspiration one from the other.
Inquisitive creatures from the deep visited them almost every day. Most dangerous and unpredictable was the hammerhead shark.
The same one as the other one. It's got less eyesight.
Oh, it was 3 meters at least.
Yeah, it's 10 feet at least.
Oh, how nice.
He's going to go get it, you know? Oh my God.
You're going to eat that bubble.
Please don't hit me.
With so much already achieved, the mood on board was excellent. Birthdays were always an excuse for a party. This one was for Yuri
To join us in drinking for the two who made spaghetti, or what did you call it, souffle?
And now look at what this joint Scandinavian effort has made for dessert. A pudding surprise. That's a fantastic, it's very small, but that's the fantastic features that it will grow and grow and grow, and it will be enough for everybody. Just like this.
That's what we don't need.
How did you do that?
With a crew of 11, each man had plenty of time to relax in his own way. They had confidence in each other and complete confidence in their ship, which had now been afloat for over 4 months. The troubles that lay ahead were of a different kind.
Ethiopia is at war with Somalia and the coastal province of Eritrea. Stop. You risk arrest if you land on Socotra without permission. Stop.
We really now have to take a decision. We're getting close enough now that we must take a decision on an exact steering course.
Tigris Roger. No one in Somalia answering phones yesterday, as major town had fallen to the Ethiopians.
That evening, a hoopoe bird settled on the forestay.
Urge you
It was known to the
attempt
ancient
to
Vikings
land
as a sign of
on
war.
any of these territories.
The wind dropped
Stop.
completely, and an eerie silence enveloped them. They awoke to the bitter clamour of the 20th century. Theirs was a message of peace, but no one was listening anymore. On both sides of the Gulf of Aden, the coastline was closed to them. Only the tiny neutral state of Djibouti was prepared to offer them a haven. And even as they approached, North Yemen joined its neighbours by sending out a message banning Tigris from its coastal waters. Djibouti had just been granted its independence, but its harbour was still a base for the French Navy.
Jack tells us to drop the sail.
Hey, baby, how's this for organization with an underhanded crew?
Here, Africa and Arabia come face to face. After 5 months at sea, the throbbing life of the city might have been a welcome contrast to life on board Tigris. But somehow it was not. All of them missed the peace and solitude of the Indian Ocean, and none more so than Thor. He had dreamed of a journey from the Tigris to the Nile, but he knew now that this would be their last port of call. At least he would see to it that his beloved ship didn't end her days rotting in the polluted waters of the harbour, or worse still, as a cheap tourist attraction. In sombre mood, the whole crew assembled on board for a last supper. In strictest confidence, Thor told them that he decided on a fiery climax to all their efforts.
That's right. We're putting them out of a home, they weren't.
They gave him their unanimous approval.
It's here. Here.
The only other Norwegian member of the crew, Hans-Peter Bohn, had been a demolition expert in the army. To him fell the task of preparing Tigris for her end. In the evening light, the doomed ship was towed out and anchored in the bay. The crew watched and waited.
It looks beautiful. And with the continent of Africa behind it. Take off your hat.
In his mind, Thor had already composed her epitaph. Tigris will have a proud end, as a torch that will call men to reason, so that they may resume the cause of peace in this corner of the world where civilization first found a foothold.
There was still a lot of life in that ship, huh? A lot of life.